We are recording this session, so the recording will be available on YouTube later if you want to share or rewatch, or you drop out midway. And we are continuing the kind of the recurring theme of bringing know-how from other industries, from marketing and from sales into the e-learning world. Today we're going to talk about startups. Let me share my screen and we will begin.
And as always, we have a movie guessing competition going on in the background. So some of our screens will come from movies. So you just type the name of the movie in the chat. So who's the first is the winner.
Yeah.
Kind of lottery.
No prizes though.
No prizes, right?
So if you've been here before, you know this is the little thing that we do. If you are new, welcome and thank you for finding time. So what can learning and development professionals learn from startups? First of all, our experience with startups is not just theoretical. Me and Ravis launched a pretty successful startup which still exists called branchtrack.com quite a few years back. I have been a part of a number of startups at various stages with various degrees of success. There were some companies that actually made me money. There were some companies that I can't even say a waste of time. They might have not gone anywhere, but definitely that was a learning experience and sometimes new friends made. But there are certain things that kind of unite startups, right? And that I think we can learn from them in the corporate world. This is our first movie screen. You can try and guess what's that about, right? Startups seem to be all around us. I guess you know all of these companies. They are different in how they started, right? There is an idea that a startup begins in a garage, kind of like Apple did, or Dell, or companies that we don't even remember now. They were startups at some point. Intel was a startup at some point, not exactly in a garage, but I think about 7 people dropped out of their jobs to start a company that was doing this new weird thing about integrated electronics called Intel. And even out of this, Airbnb was started by 2 guys who didn't have enough money to rent an apartment in San Francisco, and they came up with an idea to actually lease air mattresses in their spare room, or on the floor in their only room, to make a little bit money and help pay rent. Whereas LinkedIn, for example, was started by a guy who made millions as part of PayPal. As you know, Elon Musk was one of the founders of PayPal. This guy was also one of the founders of PayPal. He exited the company in 2002 when it went public, made probably hundreds of millions at that point, and created LinkedIn, right? So different stories, different endings as well, right? Zoom and Skype are right there. And as you might have noticed, we are not on Skype right now. So things may go different directions. So what unites all those startups? I think the underlying part is that they all had a great idea. And this is essentially what we will talk about today. We all try and launch startups, maybe startup projects within our organizations. Launching a new portal is a great idea. Let's deliver a new experience to our learners. Let's create a portal which contains all this information and all this learning. Let's maybe make it mobile accessible. We need something new and so on. This is an idea, and you essentially are launching a startup, but that can also fail. An idea could be, hey, why don't we switch all our learning from like traditional courses to videos, for example, right? And with videos,
yeah, how do we know it's going to be a success?
How do we go? Exactly, YouTube was a success, or is a success. Definitely, some other companies weren't. Who says that videos will be a success in our company? They might be, right? So that's kind of the thing we will try to learn today from startups, right? How do we tell a good idea from a bad idea? How do we actually test ideas to find the great ones? And what do we do when an idea isn't working? And what do we do with the terrible ones? So this is not something that we have invented, and we're not just relying on the terrible ideas that we've had in the past. But obviously this has been studied, right? Millions of startups have been created, trillions of dollars have been invested, and the brightest minds have tried to find ways to kind of
analyze, understand,
to tweak this math of finding more ideas that actually work and investing less in ideas that actually don't as early as possible, right? Two guys, Steve Blank, who we don't know, he has not founded anything that exists today pretty much, but he was probably the core person who came up with the idea of a lean startup and a way of thinking about startups that is kind of underlying everything, every company, every startup company today. And I highly recommend that book. That's really well written. And also Eric Ries, who, again, he's not a super famous startup founder, but he summarized those ideas pretty nicely in the Lean Startup, which is like the startup Bible for most people, and also in the Startup Way. So if you're in a corporate world, which most of you are, I recommend reading the other one, the red one, because this is where Eric takes the startup ideas and applies them to the not world, and that's exactly what we will try to do. Although this presentation is not based on that book, or not in any major way, right? So this book's highly recommended. What can we learn from them? I want to start at the end. I want to start with bad ideas, and the rule is simple. What do you do with bad ideas? What you do, you fail fast, right? All you want to do is to test an idea, and if it does not work, you don't want to be invested in that idea for years, right? You decided, let's go back to our example of switching all our training to videos, right? And we see that people are not doing that. Okay, why don't we create more videos? Maybe we need more topics. Maybe we need longer or shorter videos, and maybe we need to stick with this idea until people get used to it.
Startups don't work like that.
Startups don't work like that. They fail fast. That's the idea. They move fast. They fail fast. Another part that helps not to overinvest into a bad idea is that you prototype quickly, right? Before you say, okay, we will invite a professional media company to create all those expensive materials, for example, or we invest a lot of money into this new app that will help deliver learning to people, or anything else pretty much. You can create a prototype, you can play test things, you can say, okay, if we are trying to, let's say, include mentorship across our company, before we overinvest into this, let's try and create mentorship in one department, see what people say. We will learn a lot of things. If it's an idea that fails, we will find that out fast. That's the idea. Move fast and break things is a slogan, actually, or a principle of a very famous company, which does not have great reputation anymore, I'm afraid, but that's how Facebook operates, or at least used to operate. That was their motto. They also said, what did you say yesterday?
If you mean about that?
Yeah.
If you were not embarrassed by the first version of your product, probably you shipped too late.
Yeah. That was excellent, right? Also, Facebook says that if you are not breaking things, you are not moving fast enough. All of those things, they kind of speak to the same kind of mentality. And that mentality is maybe number one thing that we want to kind of ingrain in you today. It's this fail culture, which sounds like a bad word, but it's actually a good word. We do not allow ourselves to fail enough, not when we work with vendors, we as corporate e-learning professionals, not when we work with vendors, right? Every project has to be a success. If a project is not a success, this is a scandal, right? It will taint our reputation for years and will follow us even if we change companies and so on.
Yeah.
Now, I think we should relax a little bit and allow ourselves to try stuff, maybe not do some things perfectly, but just to see if they work in principle or not. And if they don't, we say, well, excellent, we did not spend more money and time on this than we should. So it's actually great that it failed. And another startup idea is that Wikipedia, actually, speaking of learning, Wikipedia is actually second startup for Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia. It's his second startup. In his first startup, he actually hired people to create Wikipedia online. He hired about 100 people in about a year. They wrote like 400 articles.
By that pace, they would be writing it
Yes.
for another 1,000 years, right?
Maybe more. Right?
Maybe more, actually.
Let's calculate. Wikipedia in English has, I think, about 9 million articles today, right? So it's probably like closer to tens of thousands of years. So they burned through all the money they had, and they stopped. And he was so frustrated that he tweaked the writing engine for that encyclopedia, which was called Newpedia at that moment. He tweaked the engine so that anyone can write anything in there and put it online. And somehow that worked. So yeah, bad ideas, better done than perfect. That's also another way to summarize this. This is what we like and what we see impeding learning projects in corporations a lot, right? This is why we like clients who have deadlines. I always say that one of our favorite clients is the Central Election Committee of Latvia, because they have the strictest deadline in the country. And if you train all the election professionals, a week later, that will not be helpful in any way or shape or form. So we always, I think 12 years is enough to actually draw some conclusions, right? It's almost 13 now. Every time that we failed a project, or it didn't go as planned, or it was not as fun as we hoped, was when the client did not have a deadline or a sense of purpose, and they were able to focus on that ever-escaping perfection forever, pretty much, right? Everybody who needs learning done, and the same thing applies within companies, right? If someone comes to you and says, okay, we need this course to train our people, and you say, okay, well, when do you need it? What happens when they don't get it? If nothing bad happens, and like, we need it whenever you can,
yeah, that's a failure.
That's a failure. It's going to be a failure.
No startup is solving problems that don't have deadlines and don't have
exactly. Well, yeah. Actually, let's get to problems, right?
Yeah.
So as we said a couple of slides ago, startups have this great idea. So what's a great idea? Well, first of all, let me hide my Zoom. It's in the way. So first of all, they have a product that solves kind of a problem. And that problem actually exists, right? There are products which solve problems that don't exist. If you open any TV channel after midnight, you will see a lot of those shopping for weird things that probably create problems rather than they solve them. And that problem exists, and you can verify that, right? And the market can actually pay for that. In terms of learners, it's not just our learning offering solves a problem that really exists, and we know it exists, but also they can spend this time and effort and attention, and we can actually deliver this learning in ways that are meaningful, right? So let's say if we come up with an app, people have phones to have that app installed, as a dumb example, maybe. So.
And again, this is a good example that sometimes we get, for example, this question from our customers. So we want people to learn more, so let's have this learning app. Right. And then when we start this kind of dissecting this thing, it very often comes down to a realization that actually there's no problem to solve. That we are trying to make something fancy. And if you're trying to do something fancy, I mean, startups do not do fancy stuff. They solve problems. So then you don't have to invest money there, right? So and this is how you should be analyzing those also requests or ideas, that it's trendy, fancy. This is the wrong way to go.
Like we talked about artificial intelligence last time. So before we say that we need a platform which encompasses artificial intelligence, like what for, right? Why do we need this? Do we have a problem? Exactly. So that's when you get this, problem that exists and that market can pay for, and we can actually reach that market, and we actually created a solution for that. That's called the product market fit. That's actually what Steve Blank, the guy from the White Book before, has come up with. And to get to that point, to actually find out whether that problem is there, whether we can actually solve this, whether the people will agree to that, the process is called customer development. And this is something, if we take two things away from today, I would say that this is the second thing, that we do not do enough customer development as learning professionals. We assume that expert mentality, that we know what people need, what they need to be trained on, how they need to be trained. We go to conferences, we listen to INTEA, we know all the best ways. We rarely spoke to actually, not really. We actually, don't speak enough to customers, to actual learners. And for those of you who are new to this, we have a whole series of talks on how we treat learners as customers and how important it is to treat learners as customers, because treating them as employees who kind of are obliged to do stuff is very, very much counterproductive today. So customer development, let's talk a little bit about that. What can we learn from startups in that sense? You can look at it from a couple of angles. And the first step is to abandon the expert mentality, right? Like I said, we think that we know what learners need and want. We think that we can find new, better ways to train them. We can bring innovation, we can buy innovation, and we are the people who actually are, learning professionals, all of us here. So that is very much counterproductive to success of ideas, right? It's very easy. This mentality leads us easily onto paths where we overinvest into idea, which does not work out in the end. Try and guess who said that. I think it's one of the most famous quotes. If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, right? Not great automobiles. Allegedly, said Henry Ford. In fact, although that was kind of his attitude in some ways, he never actually said that. You can even argue that the fact that he created Ford Model T, something that was cheap and reliable, in the beginning of the century, horses used to cost you about $2,700 a year to kind of operate, to feed and replace as well. But the first car he started selling as Ford Model T was about $900. And then it came down to 500 and then 350 and so on. So he kind of understood what people wanted, but that's kind of a famous quote, wrong, never existing quote, but a great quote to illustrate this expert mentality where you don't trust people because they don't know, and because you are the great mind, you are the professional, you are the inventor, you went to all the conferences, and you know all the best new ways to train. Anybody in chat, please venture a guess as to what this thing is.
Yeah, what's the purpose?
Yeah, well, that thing can be described in a word.
Yeah, mouse, Mac mouse.
Yeah, it's a Mac mouse. It's called round mouse, and it's an example of a failed Apple product. As you know, we don't use round mice, and for some reason, somebody in the design department thought, well, that would look great next to our iMac, in this excellent, perfect circle shape and so on. Yeah. And
fancy, trendy design. It's created by marketing department.
Right? Essentially, yes. And then nobody used it, and they abandoned it. Although Apple produces mice and is doing that successfully, but that one was a failure. again, because they probably never asked people, like, do you want the mouse that is like this, for some reason. So abandon expert mentality. Step number 2 is to seek and follow customer feedback or learner feedback in our case. Again, I think we often see companies that do not even utilize the existing opportunities for learner feedback. And those opportunities can be, complex and technical, all those ratings and stuff on the LMS, but also quite simple. You can actually email people and say, hey, did you like this? If you think about Uber, for example, if you finish a ride on Uber, they will keep pestering you for like 4 hours afterwards if you don't submit your rating for the driver, because those ratings are crucial for them to solve the problem of actually telling good drivers from bad drivers when you are hitching a ride with a random stranger who's probably unemployed and so on. So those ratings are crucial, and they will get you to rate that driver. A lot of apps that create those kind of marketplaces, from food delivery apps to ride-hailing apps to Airbnb kind of apps and so on, they do the same thing. They will always force you to leave customer feedback. They will motivate you to leave feedback and so on. We don't do that enough with learning. We think that if how do we define a successful project?
We usually measure completion rates.
Right.
Yeah, that's the step number 1 in any kind of analysis.
Exactly. So we have, we
assume they did it, they liked it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes. Do we even care, right? If they completed it, they know their stuff. KPIs have changed. People are selling more. They're making less mistakes. We are well protected against litigation and user client complaints. Excellent, right? Do we talk to them? No. Do we talk to them before we create a course? Pretty
Rarely.
much.
Yeah, that's
almost never, I would say, right? We kind of assume that, this is what the business wants. They came to us and then they said they need this and so on. So, but being very proactive in that sense is super important. This is an example from another startup it's Tesla, right? And in December 2016, some random guy tweeted that he has a problem. Those superchargers, which are on the way from point A to point B, where you plug in your Tesla for 20 minutes, you charge and you go further. They're typically adjacent to big malls or restaurants, and people plug in their Tesla for 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, it's charged, but then they stay in the restaurant for another hour, occupying that space. And if you're in a hurry, you come, all the chargers are occupied. That's super frustrating, right? Idiots, as eloquently described by this guy, right? So Elon Musk reacted pretty much in the same day and said that they will take action. Anybody care to venture a guess as to how long it took Tesla to implement a change? The change was that they included an idle fee. So now, if you are charging your Tesla, you stop charging, you stop paying for electricity, but you keep paying for occupying the charger until you unplug and move away. So how long it took, anybody please write in chat how long it took Tesla to actually implement this change. From the point of this tweet on December 11th.
Sharuna says 1 day, 3 days. You are overly optimistic.
Yeah, this is like Tesla is still a huge company. It needs testing.
1 month. No, it's what was it? 6 days.
6 days.
6 days, right?
So I'm under a week, but pretty close nonetheless. So Tesla implemented this change. Everybody was happy, and this is the kind of attitude that change kind of helps us see difference between startups and the pace at which they can move and grow and innovate, and kind of traditional corporations. So if we want to learn something, listen to customer feedback, provoke customer feedback, actively seek customer feedback or learner feedback in our case, and of course act on it, because nothing kind of provokes more feedback than seeing that actually it impacts something. Step number 3, this is kind of a big meaty step, is asking the right questions. Now, the problem with questions is that, with asking questions, is that oftentimes we come to people and say, okay, I have this idea. What do you think? And people will tell you,
good, yeah, great idea, brilliant, go ahead.
thank you. And I will happily go ahead doing whatever. Why? Because giving positive feedback and encouraging people makes us feel nice. It's easy in terms of energy, and startup people are a little bit crazy on some level. So if you tell them, no, that I think that's a bad idea, and you start opposing them, they will get into a fight with you and they will try to persuade you, which is not always fun, right? And it's very different. It's very difficult to back out of this conversation. So a lot of people, when you ask them, like, what do you think about this idea? Yeah. Will tell you this is a great idea. Yeah. And you yourself, when you look for proof, you will be biased, and you will look for proof that
you're right.
That you are right, wrong. Exactly. Yeah. And together, these two effects will lead you to be extremely overconfident in what you're about to do, and then that will fail. And especially if you don't fail fast, that will be, another typical project that now sits somewhere and not visited by anybody, like a lot of learning initiatives, I think, that we have seen over the years. So how do you ask the right questions, right? Yeah, like another movie or a TV in this series, TV series in this case. So yeah, positive feedback is nice, easy, and useless, as I've explained. And three key methods of structuring these conversations when we do get feedback from learners. Did we get them?
Lie to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, not House. No. House was in one of our last presentations. We try not to repeat ourselves. Yeah. So yeah, three key approaches to structuring conversations where you test your ideas, where you ask people, what do you think about this? Is this a good idea? Let's say you amassed a group of managers or learners, and you're trying to explain this crazy learning idea that you will have, like learning through chat messengers maybe, or whatever you want to do. So first of all, you should talk less about your own idea and more about how they feel and what their life is, right? So you don't have to sell your idea hard to them, but you have to listen. Kind of, I had when I was very young, in one of my first jobs, I was in a meeting where I tried to oversell an idea. I was like super eager, and we had this great project, and I had my boss with me, and we went out of that meeting, and I was so proud about myself. I presented my idea so eloquently, and I pitched it greatly. And my boss said to me, "You know why people have 2 ears and just one mouth?" Because you have to listen more and speak less. That thing, it was hurtful, but it stuck with me for years. So yeah, when you talk to people, kind of talk less, listen more, and try and find out their life experiences. So another part is that talk about, when you listen to them, don't let them talk about their opinions about the future, right? So if they say, yeah, I think I would use that. Like if we added a video version of every course that we have, would you use that? Watch that. Yeah, I think I would. Like I don't see why not. I would watch that. But ask them about their past. Like, have you watched a learning video ever in your life? Do you watch lectures? Do you watch lectures? When was the last time that you watched a video about work? Well, never. Why? It's not available, or I can't do that at work because I actually have to work, and I'm serving clients, for example. But I don't do that at home either because, well, I'm just too busy doing that at home, and it's easier for me to read something when I'm commuting on the bus rather than to watch something because my phone dies when I watch it. Like, whether you'll find out their previous frustrations and experiences or successes as well. And do not let them, this is actually where that Henry Ford mentality helps a little bit. Do not ask them about what they want in the future or what they think will work. Ask them what was their previous experience. They will tell you that, I had this horse and it fell sick and I had to replace it. It was super costly. Or have you ever tried an automobile? Yes, I have. And that was a terrible experience because it was breaking all the time, right? Something
or
like
it was slower than the horse.
it was slower.
As it was in the very beginning.
Yeah, for example, like, why would I need that? And so yeah, talk about their experiences and past things rather than their opinions about ideas and future things. And finally, a great question to ask is that
how do you solve it?
How do you, like, is this a problem? Like, first of all, try and formulate the problem for yourself, right? So we are introducing videos because we think people, our audience, they are all 18 to 20 years old. They don't like reading. They do not consume in the same consume content in the same way that we do. So let's approach them and deliver everything video based for them because it's easy.
Yeah, they're on TikTok. 2 hours a day, they're watching videos, we'll be doing videos, success guaranteed, right?
Success guaranteed, right. So if you think that this solves the problem of that they don't read and they need different media, approach them and ask them if they have ever had this problem and if they ever solved it, right? So if they say that, yeah, I never read tutorials or I never listen to or I never read my textbooks and I always go on YouTube and watch it, then yeah, maybe it's
clever guys retelling that in a much more engaging way.
Yeah, then maybe yes, that's a thing that they have encountered and they have solved. If they say, no, actually for school, it's easier to read stuff because I can highlight stuff and then write something out and in very small letters and hide it in my sleeve, and it really helps, then maybe, reading is not a problem. And the fact that they sit on TikTok don't guarantee you that they will watch and so on. Likewise, if you come up with a startup idea and you say that, well, I came up with this app that helps you match other dog owners in your area so that you can give your dog to somebody else so they can walk it, and then next time somebody else will give their dog to you and you can walk it, and then you walk your dog twice as less, but the dog gets the same amount of walks. Does that not seem like a great idea? And then people will say that, well, it's not a problem for me, right? I like walking with my dog. I never tried to escape walking with my dog. I never tried to solve this problem. That means that it's not a problem.
Yeah, or alternatively, they might say we already have a Facebook group.
Yeah.
For our neighborhood, we don't need an app to do what we are doing, solving already in another way.
But that will prove that the problem exists.
Yeah. Of course, that's a different situation. But what I'm trying to say that, at least in my experience, I've seen so many startups trying, for example, to replace Excel, saying that people are now doing it in Excel. Now they'll be doing that in an app or a system. And then it fails because people, we're used to Excel. It's so easy to do it. I don't need another system. Why do I need to pay? Yeah. Excel solves it. I already have my forms. I can calculate, my expenses, for example. Those expense counting things. Those startups were failing one after another.
But with the expense counting things, it's tricky. But
of course,
again,
it's tricky,
it illustrates. It's actually a great illustration that if someone comes to me and says, well, I came up with the idea for an app that helps you track your expenses, all you need to type in whatnot, or just scan the receipt, or just tell what you bought, and it will remember and decode and and calculate it for you at the end of the month. I will say, yeah, that's actually great. I would love to.
Yeah, I need to get
I need to
my
track
budget on
expenses.
track. Yeah.
Yeah, I need to get my budget on track. I'm terrible with my expenses. Like I definitely need that. And you will go home happy building this thing. Now, if you ask me, like, okay, well, how are you tracking these expenses now? I will tell you that I don't. But I could be using Notepad, or I could be using Excel, or whatever, but I'm not tracking. And then the right question is, why are you not doing this? Well, that's actually not a huge problem for me. I've never run into a situation where I would overspend and be stuck without money and so on. Somehow my consumption kind of fits my income, and I'm fine. Although, every now and then I do think that, it'd be great to actually take better control of those expenses. But I never try to solve this. So that is not a problem.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, we arrived at a good example now. Let's move on. Another trick in doing those customer development interviews, or learner development interviews in our case, is that it's very easy to leave that conversation, as we said, happy, your head high. Everybody said your idea was great, the problem exists, they confirmed it, and then you go home and go build it, or you go to your boss and ask for the budget to solve it, and so on. Now, that could be very, very wrong. What you should go away with a commitment from those people. If people don't want to commit to solving this problem, they are probably lying to you, right? It's very easy to say that, yes, there's a problem for me, and yes, I'm trying to solve this, and yes, I will buy your app, and so on. Then a reaction should be, yeah, buy this now. Like, my app is not ready, or our course is not ready, but give me the money today, maybe with a discount, get it later. What you will hear are all the true reasons
why this is not a problem and I don't have to spend money on it.
Exactly. So ask for money. If people can't commit to money, at least ask them to commit time, right? So you come to a group of managers and you talk to them about new training ways of their employees, or their people that they manage. And they say, yeah, that's great. We do need these kind of courses, and we need to train them better, and it's all great, and thank you for this idea, and of course, it will go great. Ask them for their time. Tell them, okay, I will then need you to sit down with me for 4 hours in this meeting, and we will structure this, and that. If they start backing out at that moment, if you ask them for money before and they said no, ask them for time. If they start backing out and saying that, yeah, maybe at some point I'm too busy now, that is not a priority. You have not found a problem that needs to be solved. That project will not be a success. The last thing that you can ask in terms of commitment is reputation. Reputation means that in startup world, it means that I come to you and I say, okay, I have this great idea. Would you like to buy this? No, you don't buy this time. Would you like to commit some time to actually work with me on this idea? No, you don't have time. But how about you recommend me to somebody else? You probably know people in the same field in other companies. Do you want to actually pick up your phone and give somebody a call, or you just write them on Facebook that, hey, I'm sitting with this great guy here, an excellent idea. You need to meet him. You need to meet him. If people say that, yeah, I will definitely tell about your idea to people that I know and your friends, but they do not want to actually write that email in front of you, that means you have not sold your idea. That idea probably is not solving a real problem. Maybe the problem does not exist, or maybe this is not the solution, or maybe you're explaining this wrong. There is a problem. Same thing when you come with a learning project and you say, okay, we need our LMS to be mobile enabled, and we need to spend money on replacing the learning management platform so that it works on mobile and iPads and whatnot. If people say that, yeah, please, how much money do you need? We need to do this right now. That's excellent. If they say, yeah, go ahead, but we don't have a budget for that. At least you can ask them to help you test, maybe, or run a survey or something.
Or shadow. one of the great things in learning that sometimes you just need to shadow the learners,
right?
Spend time with them to really understand the problem.
Right. And if they say that, no,
that will disturb our daily routines. I mean, we are meeting customers and we don't want to bring you into those meetings.
Yeah, maybe you have not solved the idea, right? Maybe you have not come up with a solution to a real problem, and you have to go back to all those previous steps, right? So you ask for commitment. If people don't want to commit, that's a bad idea. Now, that last part actually was this previous couple of slides were based on a fantastic book. It's about that
thin.
Yes, it's not a very big book. It's called The Mom Test, and it begins with a guy inventing a cooking app and approaching his mother, saying that, "Hey, mom, I came up with this great idea for an app that does recipes on an iPad and whatnot. Like, what do you think?" And she says, "Yes, honey, that's an excellent idea." And then he says, "Would you use this?" And she says, "Of course, honey, I would use this. Would you pay like $5 maybe for this app?" She said, "Oh, of course, honey, I would pay $5 for this app." This is the kind of conversations that we often have about future projects with people who don't want to commit. And when we ask about their opinions about the future, and we do not talk about their experiences in the past and so on. So Rob Fitzpatrick, great guy, by the way, British guy. He summarized this in a very fun and very, very useful manner. So if you plan on talking to people about implementing ideas, this is probably the single most useful book that you can read. And it's so thin that you can actually find summaries of it online, but those summaries are about as long as the book itself. And if you really need a very, very short version, go on YouTube, find this presentation, and you'll rewatch the last 5 minutes. Yeah, very much recommend this book. Now, final step in terms of testing your ideas is actually, create prototypes and test. Very often we say that, okay, we need a new course on sales techniques, right? And we need to train our people. We need to train our people to know our products better and to be able to sell them. And this should involve, let's say, virtual reality, right? We want to put them into virtual reality, and they will meet those virtual customers, and then we talk to them, and it will all be very realistic. Or virtual reality is a huge thing now for safety training, all sorts of. Hey, you will walk around this office and there will be a fire and you will have to deal with it, or you will have to fix this machine, or and so on. Now, those things are hugely expensive. And if you talk to people like, would you like to be trained in virtual reality? Yes, this is amazing, right? Would you care to spend like 4 hours to come down to our office and actually test this? Well, I don't know. So, So to illustrate the previous point, in terms of this point, it's very easy to create prototypes, right? You don't need to commit to an idea, just create a prototype, give it to a few people, see what they actually say when they try that. You'll find out that people get dizzy, for example, right? And it's easy to forget. And people who sell you VR solutions try not to talk about the fact that VR still makes people's heads spin, not in the marketing way, but in a very, very physical way. And if you spend more than, it depends on the person, and it's like kind of seasickness. If some people might get seasick after 2 minutes in a virtual reality headset, and that is not a great condition to learn, to be in when you learn. So very often we don't test enough, and very often, even when we create budgets for projects, we say, okay, well, how about we go and build a prototype or a wireframe or something, and it's actually work, and you have to pay for this, and it's kind of like insurance. You pay a little bit more today in order to save, hopefully, in the future, but it will get cut out of a project. We were experts. We talk to people the wrong ways. We know that it's needed. Let's just go ahead and build it, right? Well,
Very risky.
Very risky, right? So if you want to learn one thing from startups and from venture capitalists who back those startups, is that you don't want to build the whole thing, build a part of the thing, see what people say, test, test, test. And there is a great way of testing and actually optimizing something that not just startups, but pretty much any internet company uses today. It's called A/B testing. I think this is the last movie image in here. In our presentation, try and venture a guess. If you are a 90s kid, you should know.
Yeah.
So A/B testing. So what's A/B testing? Essentially, it's
having two versions.
Having two versions of your product, giving it to people and saying which and seeing which version performs better, right? It could be as easy as changing color on the button. So every time somebody joins your, visits your website, they will see a green button to subscribe or a red button to subscribe. Then you measure how many people out of 1,000 visits clicked on the red button and on the green button. If you find out that the green button led to more subscriptions, you say, okay, from now on, we only do the green button and we start testing another idea. Or it can be as complex as having two entirely different versions of your website and so on. We can go in depth, but there are tools like Optimizely, if you're interested, that make those things very, very easy. And in learning, A/B testing can be easily applied as well. Why don't we take two groups of people, make one group of people read this course, maybe just part of the course, the first chapter in the course, and another group of people who will watch a video on this just first chapter of the course will see who liked it better, who remembered it better, who performed better in tests, what the managers say about how the performance of those people changed afterwards. And then we will commit to either doing everything in text or everything in video because it works best. Or we will find out that there is no difference and we will go by the price of it, like the cost, for example, right? So A/B testing is super useful, not done enough in the learning world, unfortunately, but we can actually try and do this right now. And this is a little game that I'm offering you to play. So these are tested examples of two landing pages for for the same website group.
Yeah.
Version A and version B, you can see the difference. The version A has more text and a video and a slogan. Version B is simpler, bigger sign up button, different text, portrait of a handsome guy, again a slogan. Which version do you think led to more registrations, A or B?
We have a B, we have a B, we have a B, we have a B. We have no A's.
We have no A's.
Oh no, we have one A from Darta, and Darta is right. Scientifically, or statistically rather.
Statistically rather, yes. The version A led to
more
about 250% increase in signups, right?
Signups, yeah.
Why? We can venture a lot of guesses as to why. Darta is our marketing manager, by the way. So she probably has an insight into this, but it actually does not matter why. You've tested it, you know that this thing works, stick with it, start testing another thing. So it's
the next example.
Right? So this is the header of a page that sells something like insurance, I think, in the Netherlands. And there is a very subtle difference. You will see that there's an orange button in one case, and it's just the B has no link and the A has a little link which says read about us on LinkedIn or something like that.
No, share it on LinkedIn.
Share it, share it on LinkedIn. So which version do you think led to more signups? Like, do people click on the orange button when it's alone or when it has a link, A or B?
A, two A's, A, B, B. Yeah,
okay.
It's, yeah, you see, so that's why you need to test it, right?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. You can argue both ways. So it turns out that version A led to a significant increase in clicks on the orange button. Why? The article where I read about this was talking about the fact that in version B, which was the earlier version, I'm switching them to confuse you. So in the just the button option, the choice that you faced was, should I click or should I not click?
Yeah.
And people said, I should not click.
Yeah, not now.
But
not today.
not today. But in version A, people thought, well, should I share or should I sign up? And it's not a question of should I click or not. It's a question of what should I click. And somehow people prefer to actually sign up rather than to share stuff. You just reframe kind of their this conversation, this experience, and it works best. But I can come up with a million reasons why it shouldn't work. The only thing to know is actually to test two versions. And this is a final slide for today. So there are two versions of pricing page for a product. In one version, you can actually select your exact bundle or your exact plan, where you know exactly what you pay for, and the other one bundles plans into three things. So you can get the small business for $300, the starter for $100, and the enterprise for $500. Or you can actually select exactly how much you want to pay and what you want to get, and how do you balance between, I think, servers and websites or something like this.
Yeah, that was. So we have one B, and we have two Bs. We have an A. We have a B. We have a B.
Again, I can argue both ways. I can tell you that there are a lot of people who might want to pay $150 and they can create the plan for themselves because $300 is too much, but the $100 does not serve them, right? Or I can argue for the fact that this difficult decision of actually thinking what should I choose and how do I balance, I don't really know, will drive people away from making any decision at all. So both ways can potentially be correct. You can only test. The right answer is B, where it turns out that making decisions easier is in general the right way, so that people, but it's kind of converse to the previous one where you offer them two links instead of one. So again, you don't know, you can't know, nobody can know. Those things are super weird and unpredictable and therefore fun. The only thing you can do is test. This is what you can do with learning formats, learning apps, learning times, learning delivery methods,
design options.
Absolutely, design options, wording options, even languages and so on. Any idea, like a popular Baltic idea is that why don't we switch everything to English and stop wasting money on translations into 3 or 4 languages and save a lot of money because everybody speaks English anyhow.
Or they should learn it.
And that will help them improve as well. Or conversely, why are we doing everything in English? Why don't we invest a little bit more money into actually translating the stuff that we do, because it will be easier for people to consume and the consumption will grow. Two great ideas.
You can argue both ways.
Exactly. So if you come up with any of those ideas, use the steps before that we have described in order to test those ideas. Do actually prototype and test this idea and use A/B testing to see whether the idea works against an alternative option, and go with the better option. Those things that startups do from day one to the last day of their lives, a lot of them, the most successful ones who do this religiously and as we know, they gain great success, the kind of success that we wish you. And thank you for participating in our webinar today. This recording will be on YouTube shortly. Find the INTEA Breakfast channel on YouTube. Subscribe to all the social networks. If you have ideas for our future talks, please share. We're always happy to listen to you. And thank you for joining.
Thank you for joining. And the next INTEA Breakfast will be announced shortly. So,
yes, hopefully in 2 weeks, unless something precludes us from doing that. And we already have a topic which is very fun. It's based on a research that has been just done, delivered. We will talk about our hybrid futures. You should stand by to learn more.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.